when we say yes to ourselves as opposed to saying yes to everything else in the universe, how does that apply to your studies?
It's like you're selecting yourself. So I think, like one way of thinking about this is interesting. I never thought about it this way, but like one way we think about life, like physics of life, is what gets selected to exist, right? And so in some sense, like your yeses are you selecting all the things that you want to allocate your time to. So if you're selecting yourself to exist and you want to have like a certain kind of life, you're saying yes to yourself.
What happens when you say yes to everyone else?
You're diffusing yourself. And you're like deselecting yourself in favor of other people.
What happens when you deselect yourself?
I don't know. Your intellectual lineage dies.
Wow. Interesting.
I don't know. So I mean, because you think about biological lineage, you have children. Like every interaction you have in the world is in some sense like your children. Like that's part of you propagating into the universe, right?
Your
like,
message, your interactions.
Yeah, your interactions, everything you do.
It's creating a ripple.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, we have a limited time where we actually exist as an individual human. And a lot of your immortality, so to speak, is your impact that you create in the world, the legacy of like what bits of you remain and start to act and like actually continue to influence things. So like, Einstein's a good example. He lived for a certain period at the beginning of the last century, but his impact, he still exists on the planet. In a lot of really interesting intellectual ways. And he exists more now intellectually than he does biologically because he didn't have that many kids, but intellectually he had a lot of impact, right? So I think when you're thinking about this idea of saying yes to yourself, you're trying to focus like what is me, and how do I define me, and how do I define what kinds of influences I want to have, and you actually have control over it.
Wow.
Instead of just blanket just sending your bits out into the universe and not really focusing your efforts on what you think actually matters to you and what impact you want to have.
Interesting. What's the thing if, for people listening or watching, maybe all this went over their head?
It went over my head too, that's okay.
What is one thing you hope people think about today after this conversation, whether you've already said it or you want to say something new? What's one thing that you hope people take away from this in terms of their life, their own personal life and improving their life?
Well, I think one thing I think is an important observation is that we're really young, like collectively as a species, as things happening on this planet, we're really young and we have a lot of potential, and it's hard living. I mean, there's a lot of things happening on the planet, but I think the future can be bright. There's millions of years ahead of us, potentially billions if people get off the planet. And we're at the early stages of that, and we can do a lot to affect what that looks like.
That's cool.
By what's happening on the planet now.
What's one thing?
Really
and what's one thing we should do every day to improve the quality of our life? To be able to make a positive impact for millions of years.
I think self-love is really. I actually really liked your emphasis on that. I think that's really important. And saying yes to yourself. And also not being hard on yourself. I think this is something that we do way too much, is like we're so self-critical. So it's like if you don't hit that marker, it's like, a horrible person, whatever. And I think just having like forgiveness for yourself, like I personally think it's good to set goals, and I like to set big goals, but that puts a certain amount of pressure on you. So then the flip side of it is not to be hard on yourself. Just keep on trying. Keep on trucking, as they say.
Keep on trucking. I love this. How can we be of support to you, Sara?
I don't know. I always say this, but I'm like, I want to solve the origin of life before I die. But I want us to solve it. Like I just think it's such an important problem to understand what we are and where we come from. So I'm just hoping more people get enthusiastic about thinking about it and wanting to help solve that existential. It's like people talk about these existential threats, to humanity right now and all the things happening. And I think to myself, it's like, we don't even know what we are. How can we answer all these things? So I think I would like more people to kind of focus on the first questions, the first order questions, and not the ones that are downstream consequences.
Sure.
So it's like, like people in AI are like worried, have we built an intelligent AI and we don't even know what intelligence is? It's like, can we answer the fundamental question before we ask all these other questions?
Right.
So we need to know what life is, I think, to know what's going on. So I would like more people to be enthusiastic about that problem. I think it's solvable. I think we have the technology to do it, and I think we have the right kind of theories in place. And the people that work in this area are just phenomenal thinkers. I mean, they're the Einsteins of today. I think are focusing on these kind of problems. It's just we don't know it yet because these are the theories that are people are going to be talking about, like quantum physics 100 years later, right? So what are those theories happening now? Who are those people? And can we give them support so that they can do the work that they're supposed to be doing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Where can we go to learn more about you and your work?
I do experiments a lot on Twitter. I like Twitter; it's really fun. But I'm a theorist, but I like playing with words. So I do a lot of thought experiments on Twitter, which I think are fun. I read a lot of the comments. I don't respond to a lot of them because I don't like to. I learn a lot from the ecosystem there, which is really fun. And I have an Instagram account, which is like more. I think of science as art. I like fashion a lot, so I kind of experiment more with that stuff there. And then my lab has a website, emergence at asu.edu, which talks about some of our research. And I have a book coming out at some point.
The book's going to be answering what?
What life is. It's about the problem, yeah. So I deconstruct sort of way people have thought definitionally about life and then try to rebuild this vision of what life is from a perspective of fundamental physics, bringing concepts of time and complexity and things. Yeah.
Changing the world, helping solve some problems. Yeah.
Working on it.
Yeah, it's
a
amazing.
collective effort.
It's amazing, Sarah. I want to ask you a couple final questions.
Sure.
This is a question called the 3 truths. So it's a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Imagine your last day on Earth many years away. You live as long as you want to live.
Okay.
You answer the question, of where's life start from, what's the meaning of life, all these things. You discover the answers. You create the life you want to have. You see your kids grow up in a certain way that they envision, and you envision, all positive things. But for whatever reason, all of your research, all of your content is gone. So no one has access to your information anymore.
Yeah.
Hypothetical.
Okay.
But you get to leave behind 3 lessons for the world.
Oh, I
and this
see.
is all we would have to kind of remember your information by. I call it 3 truths. What would be those 3 truths for you?
It's interesting, this idea of the information erasure. Sorry. I'm like, information doesn't actually leave the universe.
We didn't have access to it anymore.
Your imprint,
your content.
Your imprint is still there. The content's not
Maybe
there.
the video, the written word, the audio is, for whatever reason, we don't have access to listen to it anymore.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But I think I understand the analogy, but it's just interesting to me because I guess one of my 3 lessons would all immediately be playing off of that you leave an imprint in the universe.
I love it.
Your existence actually matters. So the universe is fundamentally different, even if nobody remembers that you did that. And all of us basically fundamentally change it. I think the intrinsic feelings we have of like purpose and joy, or like the self-love, like those things are guides for what we should be doing in some sense. I think like you maximize your potential, as in the way people would usually say it. But I also think in terms of this, causal power and creativity. I think the other one I find a lot of value in is to think about yourself as a lineage instead of an individual. And what I mean by that is we're so focused on the I, right? And not the fact that even I is a collection of like the histories of our life. And then we're a collection of the histories of the things that, and also it gives you a sense of continuity about the things you create in the world, because like we were saying, all these little bits of you go out in the world. So you're basically, a packet of information that's locally aggregated for a short amount of time, but it's part of this larger structure that goes all the way back 3.8 billion years and who knows how far into the future. And I think thinking on those time scales for what we are is really very empowering.
Wow.
It's historically rooted, but also future-looking.
It's beautiful. Those are great.
Thanks.
I want to acknowledge you, Sarah, for doing work that I have. You have a lot more wisdom than I do in this stuff, and it's so much unknown that you're tackling that is so confusing for so many people, and I'm just grateful that you're dedicating your life so passionately to trying to understand and find the answers to these questions that I think a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah.
So I really acknowledge you for
Thank you.
studying, for, gaining the expertise in these different areas, for collaborating with the brilliant minds of the world to find these solutions and making this part of your mission. It's really inspiring. Final question for you. What is your definition of greatness?
Oh, It's going to go back to purpose, but I just think greatness is like fulfilling your purpose. Like I don't know why I'm using that word so much today, but I think I think the universe, in some sense you could think of it as like aspiring to greatness. Like it wants more things to be possible, and it's kind of this generative mechanism of creativity and drive and directionality of creativity that I think is just great. So maybe that's greatness, I don't know. The common sort of scientific standard knowledge right now is we don't know of any other life beyond our biosphere. And that's significant because all the life on Earth is connected by a common ancestry. So, we know that humans, descended from a common ancestry.